You are listening to The Underground Subway with host David Alston, a podcast dedicated to giving you the strategies to live a free and better life. Here is David Alston.
Hi, I'm David Alston, host of The Underground Subway. I want to welcome you to a podcast that is dedicated to one thing, and that's giving you the tools and strategies necessary to live a free and better life. Listen, no matter where you are, what you're going through, life is always coming at you fast, but life will always give you a way of escape and always give you a way of direction. This podcast is dedicated to bringing you quality and qualified guests that will give you the tools, the strategies needed by using their expertise and their experiences. So we bring you quality and qualified guests to do just that. I'm excited about our guests for this edition of the Underground Subway. I want to introduce to the Underground Subway my guests. I'm excited about my guest for this edition of the Underground Subway. His name is Chip Nightingale. Chip Nightingale is a pastor, an international conference and Bible teacher, entrepreneur, and leadership coach. He loves coaching sports and encouraging leaders through coaching in business and in the church. He currently serves as the director of Advancement of Word of Life Fellowship. Chip lives in Hudson, Florida with his wife Audrey, and they have 4 amazing children. I want to welcome to the Underground Subway, Chip Nightingale.
Thank you, David. I'm excited about being with you guys today and talking a little bit about leadership and how we can encourage people.
Okay, before we get into it, tell me exactly where is Hudson, Florida located? We hear about Tampa and Orlando and Miami, but where exactly is Hudson, Florida?
Yeah, we're just north of Tampa, about 30 miles north of Tampa. We're just a couple miles off the coast. We love being here. It does get hot in the summer, but most of the time we have great weather, and we're originally from Michigan, so up there where we had lots and lots of snow, we are so excited and so happy that we are down here in Florida where we don't see any of that white stuff anymore.
My best friend and I, we travel. We go on golf trips very frequently, and for the last couple of years, we've been slipping off to a nice little golf location where I have a few friends in a small town in Florida called Crystal River.
Oh, okay.
And
I've
I
not
said,
been there before. Yeah, but
okay, yeah.
golfing is definitely one of the great hobbies of coming down here to Florida. I live in what is called Beacon Woods, and we have Beacon Woods Country Club right here, and I've golfed it a few times. Enjoy just going out there and hitting some balls and more or less just clearing my mind. I enjoy just going out
Right,
there to clear my
yes.
mind.
Yes, my favorite motto is I see no cameras.
Amen,
Talk,
brother.
yep. Talk to us about leadership. You mentioned you're from Michigan and I'm from Philadelphia, and one of my favorite movies is Philadelphia with Denzel Washington and Tom Hanks. And Denzel is an attorney, and he's talking to a witness, and he asks a question, and then he says, "Now explain it to me like I'm a 6-year-old. Explain to me like I'm a 6-year-old. What is leadership?"
Leadership is really a couple of things. Leadership can be simply investing in people, driving people to a specific cause, or it could simply just be serving people and encouraging people to move in a specific direction. I think both of them apply very well, but they're 2 very simple concepts that I really believe most of the time, especially young people today, really don't understand, because it's really encouraging and giving life and value to people so that they can further the things that you are doing and doing together. So having a common mission, having a common goal, and using that common mission, common goal to move people in a specific direction. And I think that those are the valuable things that I find that, or at least in the simple aspects of leadership.
Now, your official title as pastor is a pastor, but and you also deal with business or in the what is considered the secular world. Does leadership is it strictly something that is geared toward the church, or is leadership something that is secular, or can it actually cross over into both uh, columns?
They do cross. They are very, very similar. I wrote a book recently about dealing with conflict, and within the book I talk about that very specific thing, the reality that leading is not just what happens in business or corporations, but leading is how we deal and work with people in all aspects of life. And really, there's so many great common denominators between all of them. And interesting enough, I think in the corporate world, they basically handle things more at a biblical level than sometimes churches handle them at a biblical level. Because the leadership principles that come from God's word are very relevant to the world. And most of the time, they don't even know that they're doing it.
Can you give us a couple of examples?
I think a great example of that is really how we could use Moses, for example. Moses is someone most people know whether they go to church or they don't go to church, and he's not a great person. He's not a great speaker. He's not a great leader in the aspects of the world. But what he does do is that he leans on God to and leans on his vision and mission to corral millions of people to head in the same direction. And not only does he lead them, he has to deal with all of the garbage that comes along with them too, the complaining and frustrations and all those types of things. And the way he works through that is helping them to stay focused on the specific goal. Now, we know that they got off track, but that's business itself. That's business, that's ministry, that's churches. We do get off track, and through those times of getting off track, we kind of wander in the wilderness, kind of like he did. Hopefully we don't wander for 40 years, but the principles are still the same. And not only does he apply those principles within the people, but he does within his leadership. And so when he hands the reins over to Joshua, it's already instilled in the people, and he's able to take it to the next level. And when you look at business, most of the time an organization doesn't grow in the initial stages of the person who develops it. It happens 20, 30 years after that. And sometimes it's really the next stage of people who you develop through that process of leadership that take it to the next level. So those are some great examples. And there's other examples as well, but those are the things that come to my mind right off the top of my head.
Talk to us for a moment about a term that is often used in business called succession planning. And does that cross as well into the business world as far as having someone in line to continue on the business, or in the church or in the ministry? Someone said you're not successful without a successor. Talk to us about being able to develop a successful business or ministry with having someone in line to take over the reins.
Yeah. Well, I experienced succession planning already. When I was pastoring a church, which I'm not pastoring a church any longer, I moved on to another ministry. But within about 4 years of pastoring that church, we began to set the stage for someone else to take my job if for some reason it needed to happen, or if the Lord were to take me home, or maybe I was just training that individual to go on to do it themselves. Ultimately, I really never thought I was the one that was going to leave, but the Lord used this opportunity of succession to create an environment in which when I left, the church didn't even have to hire another pastor. They already had the next stages in place, and the church looks a little bit different today, but what they've done is they've been able to take the things that I was doing and apply them to other people, and now the church is even doing better than it was before. Sometimes when I started, the church was at 75 people, and then when I left it was around 700, and we brought on some more staff. But during that time, during that growth process, something that began to stir within my heart was, in order to have a great succession plan, I needed to start training people to be speakers and investing in them in that way. So I even began to share the pulpit, and so instead of just me preaching, we had a 3 pastor rotation. So basically, they didn't miss a beat when I left. And in fact, they're still doing it that way. They've just brought in another guy that they're now training. They have a 3 pastor rotation. In fact, I think they have a 4 pastor rotation now. And now they're even stronger than they were before. And what's so cool about that is that within this process of being prepared for secession, they also are preparing these individuals to maybe go to someplace else and be able to lead there too. So I think those things are extremely important.
That is an amazing idea and concept. I want to open up what could be a potential can of worms. It doesn't necessarily have to be. You mentioned that you had 3 or 4 speakers speaking on a regular basis, which can be dangerous because you have 4 speakers. One may have one style, the other 3 may have different styles or what have you. The danger could be potentially that one speaker speaks and does such a tremendous job that he or she develops a particular following, and then the next person to speak and they have a following, and then you have a dilemma going on in which you have a group of four different groups within the church that are all following 4 different people. What do you guys do? Did you do to create an atmosphere of learning across the board so that everyone realizes that although we have 4 different people feeding us, they're all feeding us the same meal in different fashions or different styles, so that there would not be a conflict among the 4 speakers or among the congregation that's listening?
That's a great question. In fact, that was the when I started going down that road, that was the thing I was most fearful of too. And it's like, well, are people going to stop coming to the church? Are they coming for me? What we begin to realize is that leadership is about creating a culture that's not about a specific individual. For us in the church environment, it was about creating a culture where people were dependent on God's word, not on the person who was preaching God's word. In business, it's the same way. Business, we want, in order for a business to be successful for years beyond of the person that started the business, is that it has to have an image outside of the person who started that business. It has to be outside that charismatic person. And I am more of the charismatic type person that would have been on that pulpit. And we had another one, and like you said, we did have more of the teaching pastor, and we did have this. And for that, probably the first 6 months to a year of doing it that way, people would say that it's like, well, why aren't you preaching more often? We really want to hear you. And we would just keep saying the same thing over and over and over again. Our mission is to draw you into God's word. It is not for you to come listen to me. And we had some people leave. There's no doubt about that, but we actually began to grow even more, because what people began to see is we were unified in the messaging in which we were declaring to our communities. And that had a whole lot of powerful weight, because unfortunately, the messaging can be messy at times. And one of the ways we were able to make sure that messaging stayed the same is that we studied together. So it was not a matter of I would prepare a message and I would do it on my own that week, and next week another pastor would come in and he would do a different message and he would prepare it on his own. Every Tuesday we would talk about the topic that was being presented that week. Now we would study differently because we communicated differently and we would present differently, but we were all moving in the same direction. Leadership is moving everybody in the same direction. As hard as that may seem at times, it is extremely important in order to move people in a positive forward direction. And like you said, there are those pitfalls. There are those times where it can become more complicated. But we, at least in this last, I left the church about 2 years ago now, and actually my last Sunday was the day COVID hit, and they've been able to endure the complications of COVID and still maintain the vision and mission and direction that church was going. And I believe is because they had more than one person, and now you have leadership that's carrying weight instead of one person feeling all of the weight and pressure. So for this environment, it was successful. I believe there's probably environments where it's not, though.
Well, yes, because that was going to be my next question. How do you safeguard against the ego of four different people? Because one of the things that I always say about church and watching the culture of so many churches is that we run the risk of having, and you use that term, message. The message is that we can cross over to a point where the messenger is more important than the message.
Mm.
And how did you guys safeguard against the ego of the messenger wanting to be the top one?
Well, this might be a pretty unpopular thing to say, especially in light of having a conversation about leadership, but we eliminated titles. We
Wow.
began to about 5 years into it. I would say the fourth year is when I began to realize that I needed to have a succession plan. About 5 years into it was um I began to get a little puffed up. You saw a church growing. I saw some things within myself that I really didn't like, and rightfully so. I was becoming a little prideful, a little arrogant, and I don't like sharing that too broadly, but that was the reality, because we saw 1,000% growth. That's a pretty big deal,
Right.
especially in light of a community that we were out in the middle of nowhere. We shouldn't have been growing. These things, I was told it wasn't even possible. So, so you do get kind of puffed up. And what I began to realize is that just because I am maybe the lead pastor does not mean that I am leading the church. That God is leading the church. And the
Mhm.
moment I become the leader of that church is the moment we have a problem. Remember the first Sunday I came in, I'm an athlete in the community. Most everybody knew who I was, either through playing sports or coaching sports. And I had these people who left. They were unhappy that I got voted in to be the pastor. And one of the comments that they made is, there's no way you can't even put your name on that sign. People are going to see your name on that sign, and they're going to think of you as that athlete, that arrogant, prideful athlete, that person. They're never coming to your church. And I started thinking about it, and I was like, you know what? I don't think I want to put my name on that sign, because I don't want them to come for me. I want them to come because it's God's church. Well, for us in the church, the mission is very clear. It's go into all the world and proclaim the truth, the gospel, and make disciples. That's the mission. All churches have the same mission. Unfortunately, many times as leaders, we think we're the mission. And it was a huge wake up call for me. It's like, I don't need my name on that sign. In fact, they still don't have a pastor's name on the sign of that church. But
Wow.
they now are not just one pastor. They have 5 or 6 pastors. But what's interesting is that they now hire pastors based off of their gifts. So they may have a visionary pastor and a teaching pastor and a seniors ministries pastor, and basically they've created roles. Instead of saying this person's the head of the church, they're saying, hey, we're going to function together as one body, and we're going to, the mission's already clear. God already gave us what that is, so we're just going to function within the skills that God has given us. Imagine if we function that way in business, in
Right.
leadership. How cool it would be to see people working together in this. I'm working for Word of Life, and we're the largest camping ministry in the world. We're in 80 countries. We minister to 1 million people a year. And I'm telling you, we don't function that way. Uh, we have different properties who are in competition with each other, And if we would just learn to function together as one, we would eliminate a lot of problems. But we're all fighting for these specific things and trying to,
Mhm.
and you always have that person who's trying to elevate themselves up to power. And that's when it becomes dangerous. Now, for the most part, we function pretty well together, but you do see those moments where you go, oh my goodness, here comes a problem. This person is stepping over his lane. He's doing
Mhm.
everything he can, and he's crossed himself into someone else's business, and he's trying to elevate his power, and he's trying to do this, and he's trying to do that, and and you can watch it and go, well, problems coming, and it happens every single time. It's just too bad that we can't recognize it before we actually create the problem.
Chip, I'm really enjoying this conversation. You mentioned you were an athlete, you played sports, and so maybe if you can talk to us about the parallel between. I remember not just being an athlete, but I remember growing up in Philly and going down to the arena and watching the NBA players leave. And I got a chance to shake Dr. J's hand and Larry Bird and going to the football stadium. And it was something about the athlete that he was the celebrity. He was the one
Mm.
everyone wanted, that one thing called an autograph. Do you think that has slipped into the church in America to where the person with the senior title is becoming a celebrity and that's why people want to achieve those titles and positions?
Absolutely. I think you hit it right on, you hit the nail right on the head. I can tell you that is exactly what's happening. That's why we see so many pastors in our country failing today, that and falling into this trap of deceit and stealing from the church financially and having an affairs with people they shouldn't be having affairs with, and it's almost looks like from the world's perspective that we don't have it together, and the reality is we don't have it together, and because we tried to elevate ourselves almost as if we are God, and we are you know we basically don't have to worry about anything, because am I really going to get caught, or I don't know what the reason behind all that is, but I can tell you that when you see the church growing and people are talking about you in the community, and you get asked to go on the news, and because of all these things that you're doing within the community, and your church gets these awards and all that kind of stuff, you do get puffed up,
Mhm.
and that's a dangerous place to be. I remember as an athlete, I played baseball in Kalamazoo, Michigan, right there where Derek Jeter played baseball. We played on the same travel baseball team. He played on the older group, and I was on the younger group. He was the 18 and older group, and I was in the 17 older group. And the next year he was going to get drafted. Well, you know what? The next year I'm moving up to that 18-year-old older group, and I had a couple buddies who went to minor leagues, and I had set the state record for batting average, and the guy that pitched for us, he ended up playing for the Yankees as well, Matt Thornton, and we had all of these because of Derek Jeter setting the paving the way. We had all of these scouts. We had everything you could possibly think of. We had what you just said. I had all these little kids coming up getting my autograph. You got very prideful about who you were, but the reality is we were living off the hype of Derek Jeter, not off the hype of Chip Nightingale. Um, People were coming to see us because they were like, "Wow, man, this must be a great baseball program because Derek Jeter played for that baseball program." We were a great baseball program, but we were not the same baseball team without that guy. And and when he went on and did his thing and began to become the professional athlete, he always stayed consistent. He always stayed being true to who he was. That's what was so unique about that guy, but we were living on his borrowed time.
Mhm.
And I hate to say this, we do the same thing in leadership, especially some of us pastors have done the same thing within churches. And I believe some of these CEOs and presidents of organizations have done the exact same thing. Things we're seeing in politics, they're doing the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
They're living on someone else's dream and puffing themselves up, and they think they've arrived, they've made it. But let's just be real. Leadership is about working every day, and true leadership is not just about working and striving and doing something better every day. It's bringing a group of people with you and training them and preparing them and getting them ready to do the exact same thing. I think that's what I learned from being a coach. As an athlete, I did everything to make myself good, and I wanted to be a good teammate. But ultimately, my ambitions were to play Major League Baseball. That was
Mm-hmm.
my ambition. I didn't get there.
Mm-hmm.
And but you know what? As a coach, I have invested in a lot of athletes. And I have seen some of those athletes now become coaches. I've seen some of those athletes go into professional sports. And it's really cool to know that I could invest in them by leading them. And now they're leaders today too. And that's what leadership really should be about. It shouldn't be about our own personal success.
In the brief moment we have left, time is running out. There's an old adage that I love that said times flies when you're having fun, and I'm really enjoying this. Um, Chip, I said this, and you can take a moment to expound on it because we're talking about something we didn't plan on, but it's much needed. I said one time that Michael Jordan ruined the game of basketball. And what I meant by that is not taken away from Michael Jordan. I remember guys that were very fundamental players. They were fundamental, they had everything. When Michael Jordan came along, he was so spectacular. He
Hmm.
was so spectacular. He did things that no one else did before. And they even had a commercial out that said, I want to be like Mike.
Hmm.
And I think most guys stopped playing fundamental basketball and everyone wanted to be like Mike.
Hmm.
Doesn't
I
that
think you're
happen?
exactly right.
And so don't you think that's happening in business and in church where everyone wants to be like the whoever the quote unquote preacher of the nation's top famous preacher?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest injustice that in business, in churches today, is that unfortunately, like, these podcasts are great, that we get to learn from people, but do
Mm-hmm.
we do it to learn from people, or do we do it to mimic people?
Right.
And yeah, we wanted to be like Mike, but we didn't want to put the effort in to be like Mike.
Mm-hmm.
I have this conversation with my boys. They're both early high school ages, and they're athletes, and we talk about fundamentals over and over again. They do not like the fact that I push fundamentals. Well, my coach doesn't even push fundamentals. Well, that's why you guys aren't any good. That's just the reality of life. You have to start with the core principles of things, and really, that is what is important.
Mm-hmm.
Business, church, life, leading your home, it starts with the basic fundamentals of experience, the work that it takes to actually get to the place so that you have the right to lead
That's
people.
right. So,
But
Chip, yes, you're right. Well, Chip, tell us how can we get in touch with you and get some of your materials or get involved with Word of Life?
yeah, well, my name, Chip Nightingale, is my website. It's very, very simple, chipnightingale.com. And there you can really get whatever information you want from me. It's a way you can get in contact with me. I do speak in churches and conferences and things like that. Would love to be a part of something like that if someone would like for me to do so. I also wrote a book on conflict called Ceasefire: Finding Peace When All You See Is Conflict. I mean, we could have had a whole podcast show probably on that. And the book's been doing very well, and it really talks about my testimony from going from business to being a coach to pastor, the whole 9 yards. I think it would encourage many people, and really, I just want to be that. I want to encourage people. And so if someone wants to reach out and learn more from me, or even just have some questions, and if there's anything I can do to encourage you, I would love to encourage them.
Final question, Chip, before you go. would you be willing to come back and we can finish this conversation in the future?
Yes, I would
All
love to
right,
come
let's
back.
do
I
it.
think this would be great. I really enjoyed our time together, and you have a great show and a really a great listening group that I think you're definitely giving them value.
Sounds great. One last PS question. Who is the greatest, who's the best pitcher in Major League Baseball right now?
Right now, oh my goodness, I don't know if I could answer that question.
Would you say
Um,
maybe Kershaw?
Probably.
Okay, well, the reason I asked, and I'm going to end with this, if we're going to say that Kershaw is the number one pitcher, the problem is Kershaw can't win a World Series by himself.
That
It's
is
going to
true.
take a rotation of 4 good pitchers.
Yep.
That's what happened
Absolutely.
in that church. The church had a rotation of 4 good pitchers.
Hey,
Thank
love
you.
that.
Thank you, my friend. Want to give another special thank you to Chip Nightingale for joining us for this edition of the Underground Subway. This was very good. I'm very excited about it. I want to thank all of you for joining us, for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. I hear the music playing, which means the Underground Subway is pulling into the station, Destiny Boulevard and Purpose Avenue. I want to thank you for listening. And I want to encourage you to keep pushing forward in life. Before you go to bed tonight, I want to challenge you to do something for me. I want you to find a mirror and look yourself in the eye and ask yourself this question. Today, did I do something to work toward my purpose? Did I do something to make the world a better place? Or did I simply waste another day? Think about that. No more time to waste. I'm David Austin, host of the Underground Subway, and I'll see you next time right here.